Tonight, my family is gathering at La Fontaine, one of the city's most exclusive hotels, to read my grandfather's will and celebrate his legacy. It's the kind of place they used to say someone like me could never afford to walk into, let alone belong to. 5 years ago, they erased me from the family photo, from the group chats, and eventually, from the family registry. I wasn't the lawyer's son. I wasn't the golden child. I was just the one who wanted to be a bellhop. They called me poor, irresponsible, a disgrace. And yet tonight, here I am, back in the very hotel they chose for this event, wearing the same quiet face they once dismissed. What they don't know, they're dining on my marble floors, sipping wine from my cellars, and looking down on the man who now owns everything around them. Let the dinner begin. Growing up as a Reyes meant two things: status and structure. My father, Philip Reyes, was a senior partner at one of the most prestigious law firms in the Northeast. My mother, Karen, came from a line of real estate moguls who valued polished appearances more than actual connection. Our family dinners weren't dinners. They were rehearsals for future boardroom etiquette. Every word, every fork placement, every breath was measured. At the head of that polished mahogany table sat my grandfather, a retired federal judge who still demanded the same respect he once received in court. He used to look at us, me, my brother David, and my sister Sophie, as heirs to something grand. But even as a child, I could feel it. I didn't quite fit the mold they were so proud of. David excelled in school, always in a suit by age 12. He was destined for the Ivy Leagues, destined to carry the Reyes legacy. Sophie was no less golden, a master manipulator in pearls, debating her way to scholarships and later, corporate law. And then there was me. I liked hotels. Not just staying in them. I liked how they worked. The movement. The service. The way a perfectly folded towel and a sincere smile could make someone feel seen. I memorized concierge names, studied luggage carts, and practiced my towel origami in secret. My dream wasn't to plead a case or build a portfolio. It was to create a space where people felt taken care of. When I said I wanted to study hospitality, my father just laughed. "A concierge?" he asked, sipping scotch. "Noah, that's something you hire, not something you become." The room fell quiet. I remember Sophie looking at me like I had farted during grace. David didn't say a word. He never did when things got uncomfortable. He just polished his spoon and avoided eye contact. I still applied, of course. I got into a solid hospitality program. But the acceptance letter never made it past my parents' kitchen counter. My mother tore it in half and slid my old LSAT prep books across the table, like some sort of peace offering. "We all have phases," she said coolly. "Yours just needs to end before it embarrasses the family." But it didn't end. And when I finally said I wasn't going to law school, that I was going to work at a hotel and learn from the ground up, they cut me off. No tuition. No trust fund. No place to sleep. "You'll come back," my father said, arms crossed. "They all come back when reality hits." He wasn't entirely wrong. Reality did hit. For the first time in my life, I realized how hard it was to live without a safety net. I rented a room in the Bronx that was barely wide enough to stretch my arms. My first job was a night shift bellhop at a 3-star hotel with broken elevators and bitter managers. I carried suitcases that weighed more than my dreams and cleaned up after guests who never saw my face. But even then, I knew I had chosen this. And that made all the difference. I learned quickly. I watched how the front desk handled chaos. I volunteered for every double shift. I started reading hotel management books between luggage runs. And on weekends, I took online business courses under a different name, just in case my family ever tried to look me up. There was no applause, no encouragement, no safety blanket. But every time I stepped into a lobby, no matter how dingy, it felt like purpose. Back home, they told everyone I had gone off the rails, that I was doing odd jobs and refusing help out of pride. Sophie once posted a birthday college without a single photo of me. A friend told me I'd been scrubbed from the family tree in the holiday newsletter. Just a convenient omission. That used to hurt. But over time, it stopped mattering. They erased me. So I built a new story. One they'd never see coming. There's something liberating about having nothing to lose. When my family disowned me, they thought they were taking everything. My future, my dignity, my place at the table. But what they actually gave me was freedom. Freedom to fail, to explore, to chase a dream that didn't need their signature to be real. I worked my way up in silence. From bellhop to front desk assistant. From midnight clerk to floor supervisor. Every promotion felt like another invisible brick in the foundation I was building for myself. One that no one in my family could see, let alone claim credit for. The turning point came during my second year at the Hanover, a boutique hotel tucked between construction scaffolding and overpriced cafes in Midtown. I had just been promoted to assistant manager after catching a leak before it flooded the presidential suite. The general manager, a stoic man named Garrett, pulled me aside. "You don't just solve problems," he said. You notice the ones no one else sees. That stuck with me. I started arriving 2 hours early every shift, studying spreadsheets, watching how costs moved, how staffing worked. I offered to cover for events just to shadow catering teams. On my off days, I volunteered at hospitality expos just to network with vendors and real estate developers. It wasn't just about learning hotels anymore. It was about learning how to build one. I began saving every spare dollar. I opened a second bank account no one knew about. I even picked up late-night freelance gigs writing copy for travel blogs and curating Airbnb stays just to understand the psychology of guests. It was during one of those blog jobs that I met him. Mr. Vincent Langley, an older British man with a pocket square, a gentle laugh, and a mind like a business vault. He had booked a weekend stay through one of the luxury listings I managed on the side. Something about the layout I designed had impressed him. You clearly understand experience, he said, sipping his tea. Not just service. I didn't know who he was then. But when he handed me a business card, my hands shook. Langley Ventures, Hospitality Investment Group, London, New York, Dubai. He wasn't just a guest, he was a door. I didn't pitch him right away. I didn't beg for a handout or try to impress him with ambition. I just kept doing my job, making sure his stay was flawless. By the end of the weekend, he called me aside. If you ever have a concept, he said, send me a proposal. But only if it's something real, not a fantasy. I stayed up for 48 hours straight, drafting, researching, sketching layouts by hand, building a vision that had lived in my head since I was 17, La Fontaine, a modern revival of European grand hotels, where elegance met intimacy, where every guest was known by name, where service didn't feel rehearsed but instinctual. I pitched it with shaking fingers and a heart that wouldn't calm down. 3 weeks later, Vincent called. I'm in, he said, but you're leading it. This is yours, not mine. The site we chose used to be an abandoned dance hall from the 1920s, gorgeous bones but forgotten. Everyone told us it would cost too much to restore, that the neighborhood was still turning, that the risk was insane. We opened 14 months later. La Fontaine wasn't just alive, it was magnetic. Word spread fast. Influencers booked suites. Journalists called it an ode to intentional hospitality. Event planners scrambled for availability. The bar was reviewed as the coziest place to break up in Manhattan, which, oddly, brought even more bookings. I worked 16-hour days, often sleeping in the staff quarters. I handpicked every uniform, every light fixture, every cent pumped into the hallway. I interviewed every new employee myself, not for resumes, but for grace. I told each of them, we are not just here to serve, we are here to see people who are used to being invisible, and make them feel like royalty. Over time, La Fontaine became more than a hotel. It became mine. And then, just as the spring reservations started to fill, I got a notification. A booking. Under Karen Reyes. 5 guests. Private salon. Family brunch package. I blinked. At first, I thought it was a prank. Then I saw the full list: Karen Mom, Philip Dade, Sophie my sister, Jonathan as her fiancé, David's my brother, and Lena, his wife. No message. No note. Just a quiet reservation in my own hotel. Apparently, they had chosen the most exclusive venue in the city to host the reading of my grandfather's will. They had no idea who owned it. Of all the places, they walked into mine. And I had a choice. I could reveal everything up front, make a show of power, or I could do what I had always done best: stay silent. Watch, and let them reveal who they really are. I thought about canceling the reservation. I really did. For hours, I hovered over the booking system, my finger twitching over the decline button. A part of me wanted nothing to do with them. No Last Supper. No awkward smiles, no chance for them to humiliate me in my own house. But then I remembered what they had taken from me. Not just money or support, but identity, voice. They decided who I was before I ever got to show them. And now, 5 years later, they were walking right into the space that I had built with burned hands and sleepless nights, thinking it was just another luxury venue for their social theater. No, they didn't deserve a confrontation. They deserved clarity. So I let the reservation stand. I didn't tell Owen, my general manager, until the morning of the event. He raised an eyebrow when he saw the Rise name, then glanced at me over his coffee. Family. I nodded. They know. I shook my head. He paused. You want the full experience or? Full, I said. No hints. No favors. No changes in service. Owen just grinned. This is going to be fun. That night, I dressed with surgical precision: a dark gray button-up, black slacks. No blazer, no brand names. Just enough polish to pass for a guest, not enough to scream wealth. I wore my old watch, scuffed, reliable, the one I used to time cleaning schedules when I was still mopping floors. As I passed through the staff entrance, I felt the usual calm settle over me. La Fontaine glowed with its signature softness, golden uplights, jazz murmuring from the grand piano, the scent of warm citrus and cedar in the air. Staff moved like a synchronized dance. The lobby was alive with clinking glasses and low laughter. I caught sight of them from the upper mezzanine. They were already seated in Salon Margox, our most private dining room, reserved for VIPs and celebrities. I had approved the room myself. My mother, Karen, was fussing with a napkin, wearing pearls and a wrinkleless beige suit. My father looked predictably bored, swirling a whiskey he probably didn't recognize. Sophie scrolled through her phone while Jonathan gestured dramatically about something I couldn't hear. David sat quieter, but his posture was rigid, guarded. Lena smiled nervously whenever someone made eye contact with her. From up here, they looked like strangers. Elise, my executive chef, caught up to me just outside the kitchen. She wore her whites like armor and held a tablet with the night's specials. "You sure about this?" she asked. "They don't know who I am," I said. "Just treat them like any other high-maintenance guests." She arched an eyebrow. "The usual then." "Exactly." I stayed hidden for the first few courses. From a service hallway, I watched through the small privacy window as Owen personally welcomed them, introduced the tasting menu, and handed out wine pairings with his usual charm. The family clinked glasses and laughed louder than necessary. Sophie took a selfie. Jonathan asked for a different chair, too low for posture. My father corrected the sommelier's pronunciation of a wine he clearly didn't know. It was déjà vu. Every moment reminded me of growing up, the performance, the judgment, the hierarchy. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head. "Sit up straight, Noah. You look like a help desk clerk." I hadn't realized how much tension I still carried, until I saw it mirrored in the way my shoulders stiffened just watching them. I took a breath. This wasn't about proving myself. I didn't need to win them over or deliver some dramatic revelation. What I wanted, what I needed, was confirmation. Of who they still were, of who I had become, and I was getting it. Every complaint about portion size, every passive-aggressive dig about the service, every assumption that this place was far beyond my reach, they were revealing themselves perfectly. And when the time came, when the check arrived and the questions began, I would simply step through the door and let them see who had been feeding their egos all night. The first course had just been cleared when I finally stepped out from the staff corridor and entered the dining room. No one noticed me at first. I stood near the entry, just beside the wine cart. Owen glanced at me and gave a barely perceptible nod before returning his attention to my family, now loudly debating whether my grandfather's watch collection should be kept in the family or sold off. Jonathan's voice rose above the others. "Realistically, the Rolexes alone could fetch close to 70 grand. We shouldn't let sentimentality cloud the opportunity." Karen nodded like a CEO signing off a quarterly report. "Exactly. We need to think long-term." It was Philip who noticed me first. He turned mid-sentence and gave me a polite, practiced smile, half curious, half condescending, the one he used on valet attendants. "Sorry," he said, waving his glass lazily. "This room is reserved for a private event tonight." I took a step forward. "Yes, I'm aware." Karen's brow furrowed. "Do wave know you?" Sophie let out a tiny scoff. "Wet, no." The room went still. My mother blinked. "No, yes," I said, letting the words settle. "Good to see you too." A silence fell, heavy and awkward. I looked around at the table, fine linens, designer outfits, borrowed grace, and felt something shift in my chest. Not rage, not even vindication, just clarity. Jonathan chuckled, trying to regain dominance. "Wow, I almost didn't recognize you. What are you doing here?" "Working." I smiled, slow and deliberate. "In a way." Sophie leaned forward, one manicured finger tapping her wine glass. "Wait. Don't tell me you're the waiter for tonight." She laughed, actually laughed, and turned to the others. "That would be kind of perfect." "Do you need something, Noah?" my father asked, his voice slipping into his firm but fair tone, the one he used in courtrooms and cold conversations. I walked toward the table, stopping just beside Owen, who stood silently, arms folded behind his back like a sentinel. "I wanted to see how you were enjoying the experience," I said. "The service. The ambience." Lena, sweet Lena, was the only one who seemed unsettled in a different way. She looked at me with a strange mixture of guilt and awe. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "Thank you," I replied. Jonathan shifted in his seat. "Still vague, huh? Come on, what are you doing now?" "Assistant manager somewhere." "I manage a few things." "Yes. You look healthy," my mother said, as if that counted as affection. "Have you finally moved on from that whole hotel face?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the career you told everyone was a disgrace?" Sophie rolled her eyes. "Oh please. Are we really doing this? It's been 5 years, Noah. You ghosted the family, and now show up out of nowhere like some prodigal bellhop." Owen stiffened. I gave him a glance. "Stay calm." David cleared his throat, speaking for the first time all night. "We didn't know you'd be here." "I'm aware," I said. "That's kind of the point." Karen leaned in. Look, we're here to read your grandfather's will and share a meal. Let's not make this about drama. They had no idea. The second course arrived, crispy duck confit with fig compote and truffle juice. My signature. I watched their reactions. Philip chewed slowly, then nodded, not bad, but the duck's a little under for my taste. It's confit, I replied. It's supposed to be tender. Jonathan pushed his plate away. Too sweet. Sophie didn't even try it. I'm on keto. I felt the breath catch in my throat, not from hurt, but from habit. I used to absorb their disdain like oxygen. Tonight, I let it pass over me like breeze through an open window. That's when it happened. Louis, our server, approached the table with the leather-bound check folder. He placed it down carefully, as always, with the bill already split. Jonathan reached for it, smug. Don't worry, I got this. My treat. He opened it, paused, his mouth twitched. What? Sophie asked. It's wrong, he muttered. They only charged us for the drinks. Karen leaned over. What do you mean? The food's missing from the bill. He turned to Louis, frowning. Excuse me, this is incorrect. Louis looked over at me. I gave him a tiny nod. He turned back to Jonathan. No mistake, sir. The meal was complimentary. Taken care of by the owner. Jonathan narrowed his eyes. And who exactly is that? Owen stepped forward. He smiled, calm, warm, professional. On behalf of La Fontaine, he said, we thank you for dining with us. And Mr. Reyes, your usual table is ready upstairs. Should you wish to review tomorrow's investor brunch schedule? He gestured to me. 6 faces turned. 6 jaws slackened. David was the first to speak. Wait, what? Karen's pearl necklace shifted as she adjusted herself. This is your hotel. Yes, I said simply. I own La Fontaine. You own it. Sophie repeated, her voice almost breaking. Jonathan looked stunned. You're joking. No. Owen added smoothly. He is not. Reyes is the sole proprietor and creative director of this establishment. Would you like dessert now? Or shall I prepare your coats? I had never seen my mother look so pale. You've been watching us all night, she whispered. I've been learning. I corrected. Just like I always have. For a long, heavy moment, no one at the table said a word. I could hear the distant clinking of cutlery from other dining rooms, the soft jazz playing through the overhead speakers, and the echo of my own pulse in my ears. Karen was the first to speak, her voice brittle. Why wouldn't you tell us? Why keep this success a secret? I looked at her calmly, because I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I was still the failure. Sophie scoffed. So this was all a game to you? No, I said, my voice low but firm. This was a mirror. She leaned forward, defensive now. You set us up to look bad. No, I repeated. I didn't have to. You did that all on your own. Jonathan bristled, crossing his arms. So you're rich now. Congratulations. Doesn't change the fact that you cut off your own family. I turned to him. I was never the one holding the scissors. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but I raised a hand. Gently, not angrily. Let me finish. I stepped closer to the table, no longer lurking at the edges, no longer the invisible one. 5 years ago, I told you I wanted to pursue hospitality. Not just some hotel phase, a real career. I wasn't asking for money or approval. I just wanted to be heard. Philip exhaled through his nose. We were concerned about your future. You were concerned about your image. I corrected. You didn't care whether I succeeded or failed. You just didn't want to be embarrassed in front of your friends. He stiffened. I continued. You called me a disappointment. A liability. You removed me from the family newsletter, from vacation plans, from the group trust. You scrubbed me like I was a stain on a white tablecloth. No one denied it. I slept in staff rooms for 2 years, I said. I worked triple shifts, cleaned vomit from marble floors, studied supply chain management on my 10-minute breaks. I burned through relationships, holidays, even my own health. I looked each of them in the eyes. But I never stopped building. I turned rejection into blueprints. I turned silence into signatures. And this place, La Fontaine, was born from everything you didn't see in me. David sat up straighter, his voice quieter than usual. I didn't know Noah. None of us did. You didn't ask, I replied. That's the point. Lena looked at David, then at me. I chose this place for tonight. I had no idea it was yours. I know, I said gently. You're not the problem, Lena. Jonathan still wasn't convinced. You're acting like you've won something. No, I said, my tone even. I'm not trying to win. I'm done playing games where someone like you keeps score. Karen looked shaken. Her voice trembled when she said, we're just surprised. That's all. You have to admit, this is a lot to take in. You want the rest? I asked. She blinked. There's more. I bought this building 2 years ago. With a partner. Then bought him out 6 months later. I employ 78 staff. I run 3 private events a week, have 2 more locations in development and a hotel management consultancy I built during lockdown. The wine you drank tonight. I selected it myself from a vineyard in the Lawyer Valley. The chairs you're sitting in, I had them custom built because I believe people should never feel like guests are more important than the people who serve them. Silence again. Then Owen stepped in, placing a small envelope in front of me. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Reyes, he said, professional as ever. Investor briefings in Salon Dix are ready. Also, Chef Elise wants your approval on the final touches for tomorrow's launch menu. Thank you, Owen, I said, not looking away from my family. I'll be there shortly. As Owen exited, I returned my gaze to the table. I'm not telling you all this to gloat, I said. I'm telling you because for the first time in my life, I don't need your permission to be proud of myself. Karen looked like she might cry. We're proud of you, Noah. Are you? I asked. Or are you just relieved that I finally became someone you can introduce at brunch? Sophie shifted uncomfortably. That's not fair. Neither was erasing me. Philip folded his hands. Where do we go from here? I paused. This was the moment they'd expected me to soften, to reach for reconciliation. Instead, I said, we'll go nowhere unless some things change. What things? Karen asked. No more condescension. No more veiled insults disguised as concern. No more talking about my life like it's a cautionary tale. If I'm in this family, it will be as an equal, or not at all. Jonathan opened his mouth again. I cut him off with a glance. And to be clear, my business, my brand, and my staff are not your networking opportunities. No investment ideas, no LinkedIn favors, no wedding discount codes. This hotel isn't your trophy. Sophie looked away, visibly stung. I'm not asking for an apology, I said more gently now. But I am drawing a line. David stood up slowly. You deserve that line, he said. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you years ago. His words weren't perfect, but they were real. I nodded. Karen placed her napkin on the table. Will you come to the memorial next week? I hesitated. Maybe. Sophie's voice came softer this time. If I wanted to apologize properly, would you hear it? I looked at her. For once, Sophie. I said, don't say anything. Just show me. She nodded. I stepped back. I have people waiting. Thank you for coming. And thank you for reminding me who I've become. I turned to leave. Not as a bellhop. Not as a black sheep. But as the man who built the table they never thought I'd sit at. The next morning, I returned to La Fontaine at 6:00 a.m. The air was still. The lobby, usually humming with chatter and clinking glassware, was silent except for the soft whir of the espresso machine warming up. I walked the perimeter like I always did, checking corners, cushions, floral arrangements. My staff would arrive soon, but for a brief moment, the space was entirely mine again. Last night hadn't ended with a toast or a family photo. No hugs, no tears. But that wasn't the point. I hadn't been looking for reconciliation. I had been looking for truth. And now I had it. Over the next few days, little things started to shift. David texted me first. Hey, about what you said, I meant it. Proud of you. Let me know if we can grab lunch. Just us. I replied with a simple, soon. Let's pick a place neither of us owns. Lena emailed me a thank you note that felt sincere and thoughtful. She even mentioned she'd started reading up on hospitality design. Because I want to understand what you've built, not just admire it. Sophie surprised me the most. A week later, a small box arrived at the hotel. Inside was a book on boutique hotel management, a vintage luggage tag engraved with N. Reyes, and a card. No snark, no sarcasm. Just 5 handwritten words. I'm learning. Hope you'll let me. I didn't reply right away. But I didn't throw it away, either. Even Karen began to change her tune. She stopped calling to critique my decisions, or worse, pretend to care while actually trying to boast. Instead, she left voice messages that ended with open-ended questions. How's the spring menu coming? Do you still do that mentorship program for young staff? Your grandfather would have liked this place. Think. They were clumsy, but they were trying, and that mattered more than perfection. Philip, of course, stayed more reserved. But last Sunday, he sent me a scanned copy of an article about minority-owned hotel chains breaking ground across the U.S. It had no personal message. But he'd underlined a paragraph about resilience and circled the phrase he built from the ground up. That was his way of saying something. I accepted it. The truth is, I didn't need them to fully understand me. I just needed them to stop standing in the way of me understanding myself. For years, I chased their approval like a dog chasing headlights. Always just out of reach. Always wondering if I ran faster, maybe they'd finally stop and turn around. But headlights don't care if they blind you. They just keep going. Now, I had built my own light. It wasn't perfect. It flickered some days. But it was mine. 3 weeks after that dinner, I hosted a private luncheon for our new mentorship class. 8 students from under-resourced backgrounds, all passionate about hospitality, but unsure where to begin. I gave them a tour of the kitchen, let them plate the amuse-bouche, taught them how to fold napkins in 5 different styles. One of them, a soft-spoken girl named Elle, stayed behind after everyone left. "Is it true you used to be a bellhop?" she asked, wide-eyed. I smiled. "I used to carry luggage, mop floors, clean drains. All of it." She tilted her head. "Then how did you become this?" I looked around the dining room. At the linen I'd picked, the chandelier I'd argued for, the menu board I still updated by hand. By not letting anyone else define what this had to look like. She nodded, as if tucking the answer into her future. That night, I sat alone at my usual table in the far corner of La Fontaine. The room was empty. Candles flickered low. A single glass of Pinot Noir sat untouched beside my notes for the summer wine program. I opened my notebook, the same one I'd used to sketch La Fontaine's first floor plan, on the back of an unpaid electric bill. This time, I wrote something new. Success, to me, isn't wealth or recognition. It's walking into a room where they once laughed at you, and realizing their laughter no longer controls the air you breathe. It's creating something so whole, so rooted in truth, that even your past selves would stand up and applaud. I put down my pen. Then I stood up, walked to the front entrance, and stepped outside. The city was still alive, cars humming, wind sharp against my face. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running. I had arrived.